Still have people coming in. All right. So this whole purpose of this conversation today is to talk about managing stress and overcoming burnout. What I want you to get out of this are just some ideas for how to help you in your life and in your work life, and how to help. I know everybody says work-life balance, but it really should be life-work balance, right? You want to figure out how you can balance out all of the incoming stresses from work and from home, and right now there isn't a good solid line between the two if we're working from home. So how do we manage all of that? How do we recognize it in ourselves when we're doing too much? How do we recognize it in others when we're doing too much? And how to recover and get out of it. So a little bit about me. My name is Emily Tiberio. From back in the day, I was Emily Ianello when I started at Gannett in 2005. So it's been a long time, but I worked at Gannett from 2005 to 2012. I started as a co-op from RIT. And then I went into systems engineering. I worked in integrated work management for a while. And then I ended my career as a design engineer. So there's a very near and dear to my heart. Nuclear is near and dear to my heart. That was where my career was. My husband is still working in nuclear power. He's Energy Harbor. He is what is he? He's the corporate IT manager for Energy Harbor. That's what he is. He's moved around a lot, so it's hard to keep track of him. He can't hold a job. So I'm a certified nutritional therapist. I have been since 2015. So I took my time off to go back to school to follow a passion and a purpose, and something that I've always wanted to do. I'm also a certified personal trainer and a group fitness instructor. I own a fitness and wellness studio just about a half a mile from my house now, and I'm in Beaver, Pennsylvania. If you don't know where that is, it's about 40 minutes north of Pittsburgh. Yes, it's hard living in a town where everybody's used to winning. It's very difficult, but I'm getting used to it. I'm from Buffalo, New York originally, so that's what that joke is about. I have written a couple books. I've written a lifestyle journal. I've written a nutrition and lifestyle guide called Eat Right for Life. That's what I'm holding in my hand there in the picture. I have 2 little kids and 2 cats and a Boggle puppy. She's a Boston Terrier Beagle, and she's currently my favorite child because she doesn't need me to do her homework with her. And I also coach outdoor track and field for the middle school here in town, and cross country. So I'm coming at you as a business owner, as a former engineer, understanding nuclear. I understand the demands, right? I know what you're going through, and I also have a lot on my plate still, right? So it's not like I'm just a stay-at-home mom who I definitely don't clean all day. I almost took a picture of my laundry pile yesterday and put this here instead of my face, just so that you can see that I'm not doing everything perfectly, and that this is not an Instagram worthy home, I promise. So I have a lot I'm juggling too, and I want you to know that I understand you, and maybe more than you think I understand you. So our objectives today are to make sure that you understand the concept of burnout. I want you to recognize the difference between being stressed and being burned out, and being depressed and burned out. I'll probably use the word burnout 8,000 times. If you want to count, maybe I'll give you some M&Ms if you can count them all at the end. But recognizing the signs and symptoms in yourself and in your coworkers is really important, especially if you're a supervisor. I know a lot of you are at this point in your careers. Understanding the short and the long-term consequences of staying in that zone where you're pushing yourself to your absolute limits, right? When you're pushing the envelope, if we're talking about airplanes, that's the point where the airplane starts to shake and fall apart. We don't want you to get to that point. We want to stop you before then. And then giving you these strategies and these different ideas and ways to manage all of those and juggle all of those responsibilities. And a lot of that comes from too, like understanding what you can let go. And we'll talk about some of that too. And then building that resilience, building balance, and overcoming, if you are in the burnout zone right now, how to get out. And then also how you can help your friends, because we all need to be able to help each other and our coworkers get through these things. So what in the world is burnout? So burnout is, the purpose of this presentation isn't to diagnose you with anything, by the way. I'm not trying to treat you for anything medical. I'm a nutritional therapist. I can't diagnose anything. I can't prescribe drugs, but I can work with you to help you feel better. So one of the challenges that we have with burnout is that the signs and symptoms are extremely similar to depression. The depression is a medical condition, okay? And that comes with chronic exhaustion. You need a diagnosis. It's typically treated with prescription drugs, and depression impacts every area of your life. So can't get out of bed, you can't shower, you can't function. That's not just work, right? That's home too. And then burnout on the other side of the ovals is the depletion of energy just for your tasks. So when you don't want to get up to go to work, when you get there, you just can't focus to complete the things that you have to do. You're not finding that drive, or you have this like deep dreading feeling that like, okay, it's Monday is coming, like that feeling, Monday is coming. And it's just not resolvable. So all of those things, burnout and depression, cross over into similar feelings, which is why sometimes it's hard to draw the line between the two. So you can have trouble concentrating at home and at work if you're burned out. You can have problems with memory, remembering what to do, what you came in the room for, and feeling just generally exhausted and just lacking lust for life. But it's not a burnout, for example, like depression, burnout is something that you can't fix in a day. Okay, so that's something else to keep in mind. Like if a hot bath and chocolate fixes it, it's not burnout or depression, right? It's just a bad day or a rough moment and you're getting through it. So understanding the overlap and then also understanding what burnout and depression aren't is important so that you know what you're dealing with yourself and with others. Sometimes a hug is all it takes. So you guys love performance curves, so I threw this in here for you, right? So with burnout, the more there's also obviously a healthy amount of stress, right? We all know what it feels like to have a mod due and have all the paperwork due and like to really push to get that done and like the rush, like you get a rush when you have a deadline. There's a creative balance there, right? There's healthy tension and then there's exhaustion. And in the middle, you have peak performance, right? So you can only put so much pressure on yourself and on your drive before that stress turns into fatigue and it starts to take you to panic and anxiety, right? So you have a very delicate balance if you're managing a project or you're managing other people. Keep in mind that sweet spot for creativity and for peak performance is right in the middle. Just the right amount of pressure, just the right amount of love and hugs, right? And just the right amount of stress will give you that peak performance. And then once you get to the burnout end, when you hit that wall, it's just all downhill from there and you don't want to get into the red zone. I have been there and I will tell you about that. So it's kind of just to give you, because you love graphs. So what I would like to do next is have you take a little quiz. I gave you all you all have this ahead of time, but in the next 3 or 4 slides, you can actually just take this on your handout if you have it in front of you, or you can grab a piece of paper and you can write down, let's see, how many are there? 1 through 15, and we're just going to keep track of our little score. I'm sure a lot of us are, if you were a teen magazine person back in the 90s and early 2000s, the quizzes were the best part, right? I want to find out everything about my life in this teen magazine quiz. That's what we're going to do today. Okay, so we're going to take a burnout quiz. And when you're ready, what I'd like for you to do is read through each one of these statements and give it 1 through 5 based on how you feel about that statement. So I feel run down and drained of physical or emotional energy. Do you feel that way a little bit? Do you feel that way not at all? Do you feel that way very often? So this is with regards to work, okay? So if you can, write on a piece of paper 1 and then give yourself a point, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 points. Number 2, I have negative thoughts about my job. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 points. Number 3, I'm harder and less sympathetic with people than perhaps they deserve. That's tricky in nuclear because you're working with a lot of salty old men, right, Dave? So it can be hard when you have to be sympathetic. Number 4, I'm easily irritated by small problems or by my coworkers and team. So pick points for those, write them down. At the end, we're going to assess how burned out you are. I'm going to go to the next slide. Hope you're ready. Number 5, I feel misunderstood or unappreciated by my coworkers. Not at all, rarely, sometimes, often, very often. I feel that I have no one to talk to. I feel like I'm achieving less than I should, not reaching my full potential. I feel under an unpleasant level of pressure to succeed. Some of these things are external, some of these things are internal, as far as being driven externally or internally, okay? Number 9, I feel that I'm not getting what I want out of my job. I'm doing menial tasks. They're not giving me things that are challenging enough. I've had that conversation. I feel that I'm in the wrong organization or the wrong profession. I've had that conversation too. Probably with Dave. I'm frustrated with parts of my job. This is my favorite nuclear power question. I feel that the organizational politics or bureaucracy frustrate my ability to do a good job. Nuclear power at its finest, my friends. 3 more. I feel that there is more work to do than I practically have the ability to do. Not the time, but the ability. Next one is I feel that I do not have the time to do many of the things that are important to doing a good quality job. And number 15, I find that I do not have time to plan as much as I would like to. So if you could take all of that and add all those points up, which I know you can do because you're all very capable, very intelligent women and man. I always like to equate the burnout to, I don't know if you guys are I Love Lucy fans, but the Vitamita Vegemin commercial always reminds me of, like, ask yourself, are you tired, run down, listless? Do you poop out at parties? That's burnout. Are you tired, run down, listless? All right, let's see what our results show us. So if you have between 15 and 18 points, you have no sign of burnout here, you're good to go. You're managing life, you're managing work, everything is hunky-dory. 19 to 32, you've got a little bit of some burnout here, like some signs, but maybe some of the factors are a little bit more severe. So maybe you picked a couple 5s, but most things are 1s. So that would be like focus areas of burnout, if that makes sense. 33 to 49, you're in like that orange zone, like you're kind of at the teeter-totter point. You could be ready to burn out. There could be a point that just pushes you over the edge. And then especially if you have several scores that were at 4s and 5s. 50 to 59, you got to put the brakes on. You're at severe risk of burnout. You have to do something about it right now, like today, which is great because, well, here the sun is shining. It might not be sun and shiny there, but you can go for a walk. And then 60 to 75, you're where I was that 12 or so years ago. You're at very severe risk of burnout. You need to do something about it urgently, like right away. So hopefully that didn't, that wasn't like a huge shock, and you all kind of have an idea, had an idea of what was happening. Most of us are aware that we're in this zone, but putting a number to it kind of makes it easier to categorize, makes it easier to say, okay, this is where I'm at. And now I know that the next time I take this quiz, I want a lower number, right? So you have something to like, you have something quantitative. You can look at this and you can say, okay, I can go back and I can score myself at different points and I'll know, okay, hey, it's outage season. Like, okay, yeah, I'm a 59, but like rest of the time I'm like a 19. So I'm okay. So pay attention to these questions changing, maybe come back and take it every couple like months and just give yourself a self-check. So what we should do now is figure out how we got to this point, right? So how did we get to being a little bit burned out or really burned out or on our way downhill, right? There's a lot going on, and there's stuff from home and there's stuff from work too, but I want you to think about just these six major points, which are the most common paths to burnout in just the workplace. Okay, this doesn't really have a whole lot to do with at home, so let's try and separate the two if we can. I know that's hard, but your workload obviously has a lot to do with it. If it's absolutely unsustainable and you can't keep up ever, even if you were to work 24 hours a day, right, 7 days a week, would you still not be able to keep up? Then that would be unsustainable, right? That workload is too much for one person. So maybe they just let go somebody in your department, or somebody retired, or somebody quit. Somebody moved to a different department. Somebody went to license class, my favorite. And now you have to take on all of that other work in the same amount of time, or in less time, even if you have, you're still carrying your own workload. Control. You don't feel like you have any creative input over what you do or when you do them. That can really start to burn you out because you feel like you're marching to someone else's drum, right? And when you do that, you're not using your best skills and your skill sets. So having some kind of control over how you do your job will help you avoid burnout. So that part is something to pay attention to. Do I just not have enough control? Reward and feedback. Am I being appreciated? Am I being recognized for all the hard work that I'm doing? Am I getting constructive criticism, or am I just getting criticism? So paying attention to what makes you tick as far as when you have that feedback loop, what it looks like. So if you're in a situation with a supervisor who doesn't give you that any kind of feedback at all, except for in your reviews, and then you're a 3 and you don't know why, having constant check-ins, like even weekly or every other week, will help you feel like you're getting a little bit more feedback. And sometimes we create situations that don't exist, right? So sometimes we just don't think we're appreciated when we really are. Workplace community. Do you feel supported? Do you feel like everyone is on the same page? Do you feel included and welcomed in your group, and when you're in a project team, and when you're at a team meeting? Like, do you feel like you have purpose and that you belong there? Fairness, where this is a women in nuclear conversation, right? Do we have equal opportunities? And I like to say not equality, but equal opportunities, right? And is there favoritism being played? So paying attention to what is going on around you as far as recognizing those situations will help you. But also propelling yourself into those opportunities, right? So don't just sit back and wait for them. You have to go after them as well. Miss Sue DeVito is an amazing example of going after something that you want, right? Like if you have a role model, she's a great one. So keeping in mind too, that like you can create these opportunities for yourself, and values. If they're still hanging up on the walls in the engineering building, I'd be amazed. But those values are important, right? And sometimes they're in big banners all over the place. But do those speak to you? Is it meaningful, the work that you're doing? Do you have the same values as the company that you're working for? Or do you have to compromise yourself in order to fit the mold in your job? So these are the paths that any one of them can start you down the path to burnout. So keep in mind that there's more than one aspect to this, and there's more than one way to burn yourself out. That's what the point of this is. So what happens when you get burned out? When you start or when you're on your way down the curve, right? When you're on the other side of the productivity line. So what starts to happen? Your health is going to decrease, right? So you end up having more sick days, heart disease, exhaustion, frequent infections. So that's what happened to me. I worked myself almost to death. I was in the ICU. I was hooked up to a bed. I was still my pager was still going off, right? And if you're not here in 2 hours to do this mod, when there's something wrong with the mod, to correct this thing going on with your mod, then you're a 2. Okay, well, I am stuck in this bed. I am strapped down. I can't actually leave, but I guess I'll be a 2 because I can't leave to fix this issue that you somehow can't get around without me. So my health completely failed. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, hypothyroidism, PCOS. My body was shutting down. And that's just too long, going too hard, right? Productivity fails too. So as you're going downhill, you can't focus, you can't think, you can't make deadlines. You're sitting in a meeting and you can't stay awake. And then you also get so narrow-minded, like you get so grumpy and inside yourself that you end up stalling your own career, right? So because you're having such a hard time keeping up and finding, you can't even take time to find the next path to further your career. And this has a ripple effect, okay? You go home miserable, right? You drive to work miserable. So not only are you taking it out on yourself internally and your coworkers externally, but you're taking it home and kicking the dog. You're beeping at people on the highway on the way into work. Like all you talk about at dinner is work and how much you hate it. Your husband's miserable. He doesn't want to hear about it anymore, right? And it's 100% contagious. So the burnout, the negative impact of burnout is contagious. It impacts everyone around you. Everyone can feel that negative energy, and it just attracts more and more negative energy. Hopefully I'm not talking directly about you and it's just somebody that you know, right? It's just one of your friends. So let's help each other, right? So we've said this a lot in the past year. Check on your strong friends. We're not okay, right? Check on your working moms. We're not okay. The mental health is a huge concern right now, and it's gotten so much spotlight in the last year, thank goodness, in our country. And people are finally getting comfortable talking about it too, and that awareness is really spreading. So even if you're not feeling all of the effects of burnout or any of the effects of burnout, you can still check on your strong friends, right? You can still help everybody. Ask questions about their work, your husband's work day, your friend's work day, and not just how was your day? Good, but like genuinely be concerned and dig a little bit deeper to make sure that their well-being is there, that they're satisfied, and that they're not overworking themselves. You can even try and like sneak in some of those quiz questions in your conversations, right? It's just important to recognize that burnout in other people because, like I said, it's contagious, just like flu or head lice or COVID, and hand, foot, and mouth. That was the worst one when my kids were little, was hand, foot, and mouth. It's contagious. And if they're burned out, then so will you. And it will just carry into every relationship. And be encouraging and empathize with your coworkers, friends, family. Make sure that if they are showing signs of burnout, you're there just to give them suggestions, send them positive memes, whatever you have to do, and encourage them to make some changes. You can always provide them with some of these ideas that we're doing in the presentation too. So just remember that you don't always get to choose your situation, but you can always control your reaction, right? So you can choose your path out, and the difference between a happy and an unhappy person is just one choice. So that perspective is everything. And if you can help someone else see a different perspective, you can have a huge impact on their life. I don't know if you need to stand up, but I am a fitness instructor, right? By proxy and by choice. And I'm gonna make you all stand up. Most of you are black, so you don't have to. This is the part where you can see I am dressed up from the waist up. I'm wearing sweatpants. So if you can, all just stand up for a minute. Sherry, get up, I can see you. All right, so we're just gonna march because we need to, and we need to feel good, and we need to relax a little bit. I'm glad that Dave gave me his regard. And we're marching. And this is something you can do at your office. You can, it doesn't matter, because hey, I'm 5'4", so I could do this in my cube and no one would ever see me because the cubes are all 5'6", right? All right, now take a break. You're gonna stretch your back out. So interlock your fingers around out your back. My cat is crying. I'm sure you can hear him. Make cactus arms and stretch your chest. Push your shoulders down your back. Cactus arms. It's Flex Friday. You can flex a little bit for the screen. That feels good. Right arm over left. Rotate those wrists that are on the computer all day. Other side. My cat, I don't know what my cat's doing, but he has a lot to say right now. He must have an input, always has an input. And then something else that happens as we sit all day is our hamstrings and our hip flexors and everything gets really tight. So one of the things that you can do for tight hip flexors at work is just take one foot, put it over your knee and just sit like that. That feels really good. And you can stretch those hip flexors out. Your hip flexors and hamstrings get so tight when you sit all day. Switch sides, stretch the other hip flexor. And all that moving made me have to pee, but I can make it. We don't have to go pee during the meeting. We got this. All right, so we're good. We're loose. We're gonna get back to work. You can do that anytime, friends. You can go for a walk. You can stretch things out. That felt good. I needed that. All right, we're back. So there's more to burnout than just burnout, right? There's also stress. So what's the difference between stress and burnout, and and how do you manage both of those things and recognize them, right? So let's get into that. I would like it to click. There it goes. So there are different kinds of stress. There's acute stress, which is short term, and that happens with like sudden changes, or it's driven by a specific event. So like getting ready for a presentation, that can be stressful, but that's just acute stress. By getting a puppy, that is acute stress, that all of a sudden you're not sleeping, having a baby. That's not a little change, but those changes cause short-term stress, but it's a very sudden change. You know you're pregnant, but all of a sudden there's a baby and now you can't do anything about it, right? There's also the other kind of stress for acute stress is personality-based, okay? So if you have a type A personality, right? I don't know if Kathy McLaren's on here. She promised me she would come, but if you're a Kathy McLaren, right, and you're a type A personality, then stress is part of your being, right? Because everything needs to be controlled and everything has to be a certain way. And I have to do this, and this. And because it's part of your personality, you create that stress on yourself, but that's just how you were made, right? And being the other part of it too would be the other side of it, which would be me, right? So I'm a worrier. what's wrong with the cat? Like, why is he crying? Oh, where's Wilson? Is he okay? Is he having a heart attack? Can someone check on Wilson? Like, I will be worrying about everything. I worry about everybody, everything, every event. I'm a worrier, right? And then that's all personality based. It depends completely on those other quizzes that you can take. And then chronic stress is long-term. And sometimes that is linked to trauma. So like childhood trauma can leave chronic stress. And that can, like, chronic relationship stress or workplace stress, or is there going to be enough food on the table stress? That kind of stress is takes more time to undo because it's been around longer, if that makes sense. So there's different types of stress. You can learn more at the that little link that I have at the bottom there too. I did include references for you guys because I knew that you would be looking at them. So the impacts of long-term stress. So if you were like me and you were driving it so hard that you're going to hit a wall and it's going to be a hard and fast fall when you start to fall, then mine was immune system suppression, right? So my autoimmune system shut down. I had all of these different diseases pop up immediately. It took me about 3 months to go from that, like, to slide all the way down that performance curve and hit the bottom. It took me about 3 months to do that. I started out with just having to take Zoloft to go to work, right? I had to take anti-anxiety meds just to walk in the door. And if you have to take drugs in order to function at work, something that might be a flag, right? There might be something wrong there. So there should have been a little white flag waving before that, maybe 6 months before that. But I started to go downhill, and when I did, it was a very quick slide. That also came with digestive issues. It can come with inflammation. So every bone in my body hurt. Everything hurt. I couldn't sleep, but when I did sleep, it was when I was driving, right? I would just fall asleep driving. I would fall asleep face to face with a vendor talking about a mod. I would be talking and falling asleep. Like, I couldn't stay awake. Mood disorders. I was a miserable wreck, and I'm sorry. All of you, I'm sorry, but I was an absolute mess. Thankfully didn't have any problems with my heart, but I had migraines, I had high blood pressure, I ended up with type 1 diabetes, and obviously I had all kinds of depression and anxiety, right? So all of these things are all chemical. They start out with chemicals, right? And cortisol is that stress chemical. And if cortisol levels are high, it's going to go after your metabolism first, ladies. So if you can't control that level of cortisol, then you can't control your metabolism. And even if you're trying your best and if you're stressed, you will not lose the weight that you want to lose. So there's that part of it too. There's a huge metabolic impact of long-term stress as well. And that's probably sad for all of us. So how in the world do we manage all of this, right? We have all this stuff going on. All I did was scare you. So as far as actually avoiding the downhill spiral, right? You have to do something for yourself every day, okay? Sleep is a really wonderful thing. If you're somebody who is able to sleep, then I would highly recommend sleep. But having a bedtime routine for yourself, just like you do for your children or your toddlers, if you have a bedtime routine for yourself, you can sleep anywhere, and your body will know when it's time to shut down. So if you remember, like for me, for my kids, we're still doing it, and they're 7 and 8, I think, is how old my children are. Hope so. I hope that's right. But so everywhere we go, we do the same exact thing an hour before bedtime. An hour before bedtime, whether the bedtime is 9 o'clock on a weekend or 8 or whatever time it is, we put on our pajamas, right? We have a snack, we brush our teeth, we wash our face, we go potty, we read books. We do that same thing when we're camping. We do that when we're at grandma's house, as long as I'm there. If I'm not there, it's grandma's house, anything goes, right? But we do that everywhere. And that's why whenever we go somewhere, my kids can still go to sleep. We have a routine. It's the same for you. It doesn't have to just be for your kids. So I do the same thing. My phone shuts off at 8. And then I put on my pajamas. I take the dog out. I read a book. I wash my face. I brush my teeth. I do all of those things that hour before lights out at 9. I go to bed at 9. So that all of that helps me fall asleep at night. And then also is your mindset. So if you're in a stress, burned out mindset, if all you think about is, this is terrible, I can't get out of this, I'm stuck here, then that's how you're going to continue to feel. But if you can shift your attitude to an attitude of gratitude, right, with sparkles, then you're going to start to feel better. And it doesn't have to be gratitude about things at work, but that would really help, right? So if every morning when you got to work, you sat down and you wrote down 3 things you were grateful for in that moment about your job, I'm grateful that we can take vacations. I am grateful that we didn't have a pry one last night. I got a whole night of sleep. I am grateful that you like write down, like for the person that in the cube next to me, because they didn't clip their toenails yesterday. And that was like the worst sound in the world, is the sound of someone clipping their toenails in a cube next to you. So just be grateful for those things, right? Write them down and look at them and go, okay, it's not so bad. Right, and now you're starting your day with an attitude of gratitude, right? Establish your priorities. So there are glass balls, right? And there are rubber balls. If you're a mechanical engineer, then you know that a glass ball, if it didn't shatter, would bounce higher than a rubber ball. But let's just pretend we're not engineers for a second, and that if you drop the glass ball, it would break. Okay, same thing with a steel ball. Yes, it would bounce higher than a rubber ball. But there are things made out of rubber and there are things made out of glass. When you throw them all up in the air, you have to catch the glass ones, right? The rubber ones will bounce and you can get those later. So what are the priorities? Okay, what's made of glass? And what if you throw them up in the air, do you absolutely have to catch? That's how you figure out what your priorities are, right? Like figure out what you absolutely have to do and focus on those things and let some of the rubber balls bounce and roll away for now. Make lists, whatever you need to do. And then also the boundaries. I should not have been answering my phone, I'm gonna cry, when I was laying in that hospital bed. Right? I answered it when Mary Ellen McGraw called me, because she just wanted to make sure I was still alive. You answer McGraw when she calls you, but don't answer the rest of them, okay? Draw the line. If you're on vacation, be on vacation. If you're at your kid's birthday party, be at your kid's birthday party. Be present in those moments and establish boundaries so that you don't miss out on the things that are most important, right? Especially for our friends who aren't with us anymore because they didn't have boundaries and because they didn't take care of their bodies. There's unfortunately a very long list in the last 10 years of friends who aren't with us from our power plants, and they should be, and that makes it sad. Nutrition, emotional eating, who doesn't do that? I did a really good job today. I haven't eaten anything that wasn't already on my list, but I made sure that I put some chocolate on that list so I could get ready for this presentation the proper way. But be aware of those feelings, okay? If you're in the pantry and you're not hungry, talk to yourself like you talk to your 3-year-old. Do you want an apple? No. Do you want a banana? No. Do you want a piece of toast with some peanut butter on it? No. Okay, you're not hungry. Step away from the kind bars and go for a walk. Like, you're not hungry. Eat fresh whole foods. If it's coming from a package, unless it's a whole food item from a package, then try and steer to yourself towards fresh fruits and veggies, whole foods. Those have the most nutrients in them, the most antioxidants, which are stress reducers. They help with stress reduction. And try and take out some of those artificial colors and flavors and the dyes and things like that do have an actual chemical impact on your system and your ability to manage stress and your ability to control your cortisol levels. And exercise. Everybody has time. Everybody has time to exercise. It only takes 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, serotonin is released and cortisol levels start to drop. 10 minutes. So if you can't tell yourself, okay, I'm going to be on this phone call. I'm going to be on this phone call for a half hour. I primarily just listen to this phone call. So I'm going to go for a walk. That you can do that. Find time in your day to go for a 10-minute walk, especially when it's nicer outside. I know when you're right on the lake, it's really hard, but like just go for a walk and it takes 10 minutes. You can work your way up to walking more than one 10-minute walk a day. Right? So you could walk 10 minutes in the morning, you could walk 10 minutes in the afternoon, you could walk 10 minutes before you get in the car when you go home. And now you did a 30-minute walk today, right? Without really actually impacting your schedule, right? That's perfect. Fit it in. I know you can. So let's talk about each one of these just a tiny bit more, right? So in order to get more sleep, right, you have to have that bedtime routine and you keep it the same every day, right? Even on the weekends, even if you shift it by an hour, try and keep that schedule the same. Make sure you have a good pillow, that matters. And now with the changing of seasons, you have to pay attention to the room temperature and things like that, right? Electronics next to the bed and in the bed are the worst. If you want to read, get a real book that has real paper and sit and read a book, but don't read on a Kindle or on your iPad or on your work phone, or don't read on an electronic device. My husband's computer turns this weird color at a certain time of day so that the blue light gets taken out. If you have that ability to change and take the blue light out, that's okay, but the stimulation of the electronics is the same on your brain activity, not so much on your eyes. So hopefully you're all getting between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. Your kids are getting 9 to 11 and your toddlers are sleeping all night. So this is just an idea of just how sleep works and the recommended number of hours of sleep for different age groups. Hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully you're all getting that much sleep. I thrive on 7. 7 is my number. So check yourself, right? So if you can check yourself before you wreck yourself, that's exactly what that means. So mindset wise, right? That gratitude, that positivity, continuing to remind yourself of the good will make you keep looking for the good. If you continuously remind yourself of the bad and the miserable and the ugly, you will continue to look for the bad, the miserable, and the ugly. When I wanted to get pregnant, all I saw were pregnant people. That's all I saw. Everywhere I went, everyone was pregnant. I was like, why is everyone pregnant? And Dan's like, they probably were pregnant before you wanted to be pregnant, but like, you're just noticing them now. And he was absolutely right. I just noticed when I wanted a puppy, everybody had puppies. I was like, why were the only ones without a puppy? He's like, this is the same number of puppies that have always been here. You just see them now. And his perspective is always so logical. It's always right here inside this little box. It's so perfect, right? So he knows that perspective is everything. When he wanted a white, whatever Mazda car that he got, all of a sudden I was seeing white Mazda cars everywhere. So pay attention to what your thought processes are, because you're going to continuously focus on whatever you have in that cycle in your brain. Break that cycle, write stuff down that's positive. Police that inner chatter. So if you start to catch yourself going down that rabbit hole of misery, pull yourself out, go, whoa, wait a second. Like, you don't need to think about that right now. Let's think about the sunshine. Let's think about butterflies. Let's put on some jazz hands. It's going to be okay. That inner chatter is your driving factor, right? Your perspective drives everything. And that inner chatter is what makes you eat emotionally. It's what talks you out of going for that walk. It's what talks you out of going in and sitting down with your supervisor and asking for a harder project. It's that inner chatter is everything. Pay attention to what you're saying to yourself. Call yourself beautiful, give yourself chocolate, and go in there with some confidence, right? Control what you can. You can't control other people. I can't control anyone else's reactions. I can't control what anyone else is going to say. I only can control my own reaction and my own actions, right? So you control your actions and reactions. And if you can remember that, then when you're sitting in that tea meeting and so-and-so goes off on their soapbox about this, that, and the other thing, you can just stay inside your controllable reaction, right? You don't have to get all riled up every time. You don't have to feel that stress and anxiety. That's theirs. That's their weight, right? And also keep in mind, whenever somebody attacks you directly with that, if they come at you with their insecurities, right? That's not you, it's them. And you can just hold up that mirror and just imagine they're talking to themselves when they're telling you that you're not doing something good enough, or it's not the correct way, or it's, when you're doing your best and you're doing it right. So monitor your reactions, and take a deep breath. Just slow down, listen to some podcasts, listen to some waves crashing on the ocean, open the window and listen to the waves crash on Lake Ontario, right? Like, just take a deep breath and slow down. Taking 10 deep, slow breaths gives the same serotonin release as taking a 10-minute walk, okay? So if you just stopped and shut your laptop and turned off your phone and just took 10 deep breaths, you would feel so much better at the end. Whole breaths all the way into your belly, right? Hopefully this is helping. Eat right. What does that even mean? Keep it as simple as humanly possible, okay? My nutrition and lifestyle guide is called Eat Right for Life. And the reason why it's called that is because I don't want people to continuously try and find the next diet, the next thing, the next pill, the next powder. I just want you to understand the basics of nutrition, right? And then understand also that it's your life, so everything has to fit into it. You can't go on to Instagram or Pinterest and print out somebody else's meal plan, right? What if you don't like chickpeas, right? And there's chickpeas on that meal plan. It doesn't work for you. So keep in mind that it has to fit your life, okay? Plan a tiny bit ahead. I write everything down in the morning. I wake up in the morning, I write down everything that I'm going to eat in a journal. Because then that way it's already written down. It was already kind of decided for me. It takes the stress out, right? Because I already decided. And now I don't have to open up the fridge and go, what's for lunch? I wrote it down already. I already know what I'm having, right? Making a breakfast smoothie is, if you're not into eating a big breakfast, you can always bring that with you. Just don't spill it on the conveyor belt on the way into security. Frozen things aren't the devil, okay? Frozen is not a problem. look for added sugar and look for extra salt, but the Bird's Eye steam bags are usually no preservatives, no artificial colors and flavors. And they're usually more than a whole serving of vegetables. There are really great options out there in the frozen section. So check those out, read the labels, look for ingredients, make sure you can read everything. If you're a chemist, that rule doesn't apply to you because you can read everything, right? But understand that some chemical compounds shouldn't be in the body, right? Plan just that tiny bit ahead, eat whole, fresh foods, and try not to eat out of a box if you can. So yeah, and now exercise, move. If you like to move it, right? So it only takes 10 minutes. I've said that already, but what can you do to actually have the time? Put it on your calendar. If you block it out on your calendar, something else can't get scheduled on top of it. So if you scheduled a 10-minute walk in between meetings, don't stick another 10-minute phone call in there, okay? Go for that walk, or take the phone with you, or take the person with you if that person's nearby, right? Go for that walk. If it's a brainstorming session, right? You can walk and take notes on your phone, like voice notes. But if you plan it the way that you plan everything else for everybody else, you're planning for everybody else. If you're a mom, if you're a supervisor, plan your own life the way you plan for everything else. So just put it on the calendar. Be creative. So maybe you can't go for a 10-minute walk between meetings, but you can go to a different room and sit, right? So walk up and down the stairs 3 or 4 times and then go sit in a different room, right? I like to sit on my front porch. That makes me feel like I'm in a different place. Creating a routine with that is important too. So like if you have to get up at 4 a.m. to go for a run and then do some weightlifting and then shower and be at work on time, then that's your routine. And nobody's gonna bother you at 4 a.m. right? That's what time I exercise and work out. I get up at 4. And that's because that's the only time it won't get interrupted. And guess who's not scheduling appointments at 4, 5, or 6 a.m.? None of you guys, right? Nobody wants to talk to me at that time. So it's my time. And just walk as much as you can. Anytime you can get up and move around, get up and move around, even if it's just standing. And then the goals too. Don't tell yourself you're going to work out for an hour a day, 5 or 6 days a week, if that's not realistic, right? Make it realistic, make it achievable. So say I'm going to walk for 10 minutes on Monday because it's a busy day. Tuesday, I can walk for 20. Thursday, I can walk for 45. Like just think about it a day at a time, and every day you should have a realistic goal, okay? I hope I'm being helpful. So you get burned out, how do you get out? Setting smart goals, embracing the fact that you need to change, right? That's important because once you're set in a way and you get yourself to a certain point, deciding to change is really hard, but it can also be really good. So finding ways to comfort yourself through change with signs and t-shirts with words and music, pairing something that you enjoy. So if you hate walking, but you love podcasts, listen to that podcast while you're walking, right? That gives you, pair something that you love with something that is new and different and that you have to change, and that will help you create the new habit. The same thing is true for your comfort zone, right? Nothing extraordinary comes from inside that little bubble of safety. So if you can find a way to get out of that comfort zone and get out of that bubble, when I first moved down here to Beaver, I decided that first year, every single month that I lived here, I would do something I didn't want to do, something completely uncomfortable, something that was going to make me cry or make me like want to throw up. And I did that every single month for a whole year. I did something completely outside my comfort zone. I did not jump out of an airplane. I will never jump out of a perfectly well-working airplane, but I did. I went and took a group fitness instructor course because I'm terrified of 2 things: public speaking and working out in front of other people so that they could see me sweaty. So I thought, this has got to be the worst thing ever, right? Being a group fitness instructor, what could be worse than that? I had never even taken a group fitness class before. And I thought, I'm going to go to an instructor class. I'm never going to teach a class, but I'm going to go to this class. I'm going to try it. And I cried. The instructor made fun of my bandana. She made me cry. She made me stand up in front of everybody with like a microphone on because she thought she was helping me. I threw up in my mouth like 6 times, and then I was certified, and now I own a fitness studio. So you don't know where that's going to take you, right? You don't know what that really hard thing is holding you back from until you go out of that comfort zone and give it a shot. That's a happy story, right? So using those different relaxation techniques, you can do things at work. You can do chair yoga. You can do visualization exercises where you close your eyes, you pretend you're not in the engineering building or wherever you are in a double wide trailer, wherever you are hiding, and just go somewhere else. Listen to the waves crash, float in a little rowboat, whatever it takes to visualize a new space. If you haven't looked into using different apps for meditation, the Headspace app is really fantastic. It has stuff for bedtime. It has stuff for at work. It's very specific for how those things are broken down. It's even by scenario. So you can go into that app and you can say, okay, I am stressed out at work. And you can just click on options for, let me move my cat, being stressed out at work. And those walking breaks we've talked about a whole bunch of times already. Checking your perspective, right? Reframe it. Don't let one thing ruin your whole day. If you stubbed your toe, you shouldn't be mad about your stubbed toe 8 hours later, right? You should, if somebody said something to you that you didn't appreciate, that shouldn't be bothering you 8 hours later, right? You have to check yourself. And remember too, that burnout can be a season. So like I would burn myself out during outage, right? It's a season. It doesn't last that long, hopefully, right? Hopefully it lasts less than 20 days or at least less than 30. So you know you have a finish line. And when you have a finish line, it's okay to hustle. But keep in mind that having a finish line that you constantly move is impossible. You have to know, I know that this is going to end and this is when it's going to end so I can hustle. Otherwise, you're going to be spread too thin. And you can't hustle in every area of your life at once, too. Practicing that gratitude in a journal and finding ways to reduce different stress. One of my favorite things to do is to take a piece of paper and fold it in half. And on one side, the left, I write down everything that I do, scoop the litter box, like everything, change filters, all these things that I do. And then I look at that list and I circle them and draw an arrow for all the ones that someone else could do. Somebody else could change the air filters in the house. Boop, move it over. Somebody else could walk Walter to school. Boop, move it over. I can move a whole bunch of stuff off of that list. And then I look at that list and I go, these are the things I absolutely have to do. That feels good. And these are the things I'm doing that are extra. I can delegate these. Try doing that even with work stuff. That will make you feel better and help you reduce your stress. Okay, so when you're sitting there in a hospital bed and you're completely burned out and you're on all kinds of drugs and your organs are failing, let's imagine you actually got to that point. How do you pull yourself out of that, right? So chances are you're not the only person in your organization who's shutting down. So you can approach your organization with suggestions, right? You can go in there with a constructive, creative input and you can say, look, to alleviate these things for everybody, we could do this, 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 and this. It would increase our productivity. It would give them the idea and then also give them what they would get out of it, right? So just like a salesman, when you go in and you're trying to sell someone on something, you say, this is the benefit to you if you do this, if you let us do this, or if you let me sell you this car, if you do this, this, and this. Establish a new relationship. So maybe you've realized that bubble that you're in right now isn't the bubble you belong in. That's when you leave the building and you walk to another building and you say, hey, I like the way that you manage these people, right? If you ever have an opening, I'd be really interested in this position, or this one. I'd love to work for you or in this organization, right? You walk over and you start developing those relationships. Draw support from them also. So then when you're doing a project or you're doing something that involves multiple organizations, you already have relationships established. Surround yourself with those people. Finding meaningful work, that's hard, but identify the things that you find most fulfilling, and dedicate more time to the things that are the most fulfilling, and then you will feel more fulfilled. You will feel better and and then you can start to align your responsibilities up with your strengths and the things that you're best at, right? There are a lot of different kind of personality strength surveys that you could take. If creativity or humor or I don't know, math is one of your favorite things and you're really good at it, then maybe you should be using those things more in what you're doing on a daily basis. And then making a really conscious effort to take breaks. I set alarms on my phone. If I don't set alarms on my phone, I don't stop to eat because I'm so into my job. I love my job and every second of it. So I want to work as much as humanly possible, but then I don't eat. And then I get hangry. And then I'm mad at my kids when they get home from school because I'm hungry. So you have to make a conscious effort to take those breaks, take care of yourself and eat. Go get some sunshine. And then the last thing, I guess, would be to actually change your career path. So we realized that nuclear couldn't be for both of us. When we had kids and they kind of gave me an ultimatum, then I had to choose to not go back, and very quickly and very suddenly. And that was a whole spiral of different issues when I got really sad about that. But if you have to change your career path, it's not the end of the world. It may feel like the end of the world in the moment. Like if you had to leave engineering to go somewhere else, or if you had to go to work management, like because it just wasn't working out in that moment, that's okay. Because that builds your resume for one, and it also gives you new relationships, and it gives you a chance to try something that you might be really, really good at. Right. So my first attempt at getting out of burnout, I walked down to Mason and I said, Steve, I would love to work for you. What could I possibly do? And he goes, well, I'd love to have you work for me. So let's figure that out. Right. So my first move from engineering was to work management to work for Steve. And it was because he cared about me. He wanted me to succeed, and he saw my skills that I had, organized, people person, loved to coordinate stuff. And he's like, here, manage our PM program. It's a disaster. Thanks, Steve. Right. So I had a great time learning about all kinds of stuff at the plant because I had that opportunity because I had a relationship that was pre-existing, but also because I had the ability and the confidence to say, look, this isn't working. I want to be here, but it's not working right now. Maybe I can come back. Right. And what that turned into was a couple years later, being able to go back to engineering and be a design engineer, which is what I always had wanted. Right. So you just have to keep working towards those goals and those career path changes. You absolutely can get through all of that. You can get through burnout. I'm a living, walking example of that. You can manage your stress, you can make a plan, and you just have to make it happen. And you have to know that following those things and doing those things that mean the most for you and taking care of you is the most important, right? You can't take care of everyone else if you're not taking care of yourself. And you can't do your best job if you're not your best self, right? And you can always help someone else. So what I want you to keep in mind is that even if it feels really impossible right now, it's just a season. And also keep in mind that there is a lot more to what you're doing than just working yourself to death, right? Like that's not the point. The point is to work so you can support your life, okay? And if you are overdoing it and you are burning yourself out and your health is failing, then you're going to be on that list, right? With Pete and Gary and Tom and all the guys that aren't here anymore because they drove it too hard and they let their health fail, and Mike, and like, it's just, you have to focus on the things that are most important, right? Your health is number one. And you have to take care of it, and you can do it at the same time. You have to prioritize things, recognize when you're in those situations emotionally, physically, mentally, right? And pull yourself out of them. You're the only one who can do that. So if you can just recognize that burnout and that stress and find ways out, you start right now, because there's no reason to wait, to do it later, to do it next week, to do it after this project, to do it after outage. There's no point in waiting. So that is all that I have for you. If you need any extra help or if you have questions, I don't know if you have my email address. I don't know if Caroline sent that to everybody, but you can find me at fittogetherwellness.com. That's my studio and my email is in there. So I'm here to help if you have questions, if you need more ideas. I'd love to have you give me more, like I can give you more ideas. I can take ideas for the next presentation if you'd like to do another one. I'd love to expand more on what we talked about if we can. So that is all. Does anybody have any questions for me?